Right. What is the point of a prequel? You've just told a story with a beginning, middle, and end. Hopefully a message or a theme was conveyed. Hopefully characters went through arcs and changed. Hopefully a world was set up and explored. Why would you want to go back to before that all happened? A sequel? Totally get. Further expansion. We've just told a story and we've just gotten attached to all the stuff in that story. Why don't we tell a new story following on from the one we just told? It's linear. It's as simple as the passage of time. A prequel, on the other hand, is a little more hard to justify. It's still linear, but linear in the wrong direction. You are literally breaking the passage of time to tell it. It's unintuitive by nature, so you have to have a very good reason for creating one. What is that reason? Well, the best I can come up with is context. A prequel shows the audience how the story, the characters, the world, arrived at the state they were/was in the original. It allows for questions that may have arisen from the original setup to be answered. But it also allows for further exploration of a world whose status quo shifted at the end of the original. Often, at the end of a story, a world irreversibly changes. But because we don't spend any time in that new world, because it only arrives at the end of the story, it is less iconic, memorable, and familiar than the previous world, the one we experience for the majority of the story. Does that make sense? At the end of the Hunger Games, they don't do the Hunger Games event anymore. But the Hunger Games is what everyone loves and what everyone comes for. So to tell a story with the Hunger Games in it, you have to go backwards. These are the only real justifications I think I can give for a prequel existing. And even then, personally, I find them shaky at best. I don't think there's ever been a prequel that 100% needed to exist. Because then, if it did, the original story wouldn't make sense, would it, on its own? They also need to operate within a rigid set of rules. I spoke about the original story shifting the world's status quo. Well, a prequel must absolutely not shift a world status quo, because then it wouldn't flow into the original story. And especially big and memorable things can't happen, otherwise they would have been mentioned in the original story. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is a prequel that may or may not be the revelation it used to be, but yes, the second Indiana Jones movie is set before the first. Why? Well, that's what we're here to find out. We've actually covered a prequel on this channel before. Monsters University. Monsters University hits both notes that I said a prequel needs to hit to at least somewhat justify its existence, and it also operates within the rules I mentioned too. It shows how the story arrived at its starting point in Monsters Inc. In Monsters Inc., Mike and Sully are already established friends, partners, and employed adults in a high-profile position. How did they get there? Well, they went to uni. They weren't friends, they went through an ordeal and an adventure, and they became friends. They climbed the corporate ladder to become the top scare team, and even though that does happen in the end credits for some reason, it is still in the movie. So it does set up Monsters Inc. Not that the world was clamoring for a setup of Monsters Inc., but it does do it quite effectively. And it operates within the old status quo. The ending of Monsters Inc. completely shatters the world of the story, changing the whole energy system from screams to laughs. Well, we kind of want to see more scaring because that's what we know. So let's go back in time, back to a trusty old magical academy trope, and show our main characters learning the ins and outs of scaring. Not that I wouldn't be interested in seeing how a world powered by laughs instead of screams would actually work. And while operating within that old status quo, it doesn't change it. The world, the society, everything on a macro scale doesn't change at all in Monsters University. While the characters are different at the end than they were at the beginning, the world is not, because it couldn't be. Nothing too major happens either. Maybe Mike and Sully in Monsters Inc. might have mentioned that time they broke into the human world and scared some adults when they were at university, but it's not too major to be very conspicuous in its absence of its mentioning. Monsters University does everything a prequel needs to do, everything it could do, everything it should do. Again, I don't think it exactly needs to exist. I mean, I like it, but it's just not necessary if you ask me. What about Temple of Doom? Well, that's not really an easy question to answer, because Temple of Doom takes all of those things that I said a prequel needs to do to justify its existence and function properly, and sort of just ignores them. Indiana Jones at the start of Temple of Doom is the exact same Indiana Jones at the start of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I wasn't asking for an explanation on how Indiana Jones became Indiana Jones, but this, the prequel, would have been the place to give that explanation. But Temple of Doom does not give you that explanation. Here, at the beginning, he's already a famous archaeologist. He's already got old friends all over the world. He's already been on many adventures. The Indy in this prequel needs a prequel. And if you're looking for that, just watch the first 10 minutes of the third film, The Last Crusade. You want to know where Indy got his whip, his hat, his love of archaeology, his fear of snakes, even the flipping scar on his chin? Watch that. So a sequel is actually a better prequel than the prequel in that regard. And then none of the characters in Temple of Doom, other than Indy himself, of course, show up in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Willie and Short Round are hugely central to the movie, and they don't die at the end. So why aren't they in Raiders? Using the example from earlier, this would be like if Sully wasn't in Monsters, Inc. So that's the characters. There also isn't really a status quo shift at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark that would prevent another similar story being told after it. I mean, there should have been. The Ark of the Covenant was revealed to have been real, and God himself was really in there, so some things in the world should have changed, but they didn't. And I mentioned it a moment ago, but The Last Crusade, the third movie in the series, is a true sequel and is set after the first. And it feels just as swashbuckling and daring and fun and globe-trotting as the original. So there was nothing structural or status quo-wise stopping Temple of Doom being set after the first movie. Onto those rules now. As a result of the world not really having a status quo, Temple of Doom can't really break it. I mean, there's more supernatural stuff here, stuff that'd absolutely break the real world, but the Indiana Jones world is just more resilient, I guess. And the world itself is the same at the end of the prequel as it is at the start of the original, as it should be. But while Temple of Doom does avoid the pitfall of breaking the status quo, it does not avoid bringing up huge, impactful events that absolutely would have been mentioned in the original. Indiana Jones sees evidence of the god Kali bestowing supernatural powers onto people. He sees evidence of magic rocks. He gets his own mind taken over. None of this came up when you were tracking down another divine artifact. I think it might have been worth a mention. But the weird thing about this, the weird thing about Temple of Doom ignoring everything a prequel should be and can be, is that it doesn't matter at all. Not because the movie's so good that it outshines the semantics of prequels. It's not that great, to be honest. I mean, compared to the modern Indiana Jones movies, it's Citizen Kane. But in a vacuum, it's like weirdly sexist and racist and kind of really graphically violent for a kid's family adventure movie. The side characters are pretty insufferable and the story is about as basic as you can get. So it's not that it doesn't matter because of the quality. It doesn't matter because it and the original, despite only being set 1 year apart, are completely detached from each other. They could be movies in completely different franchises. Seriously, if Temple of Doom was like a Tomb Raider movie or an Uncharted movie and everything was exactly the same except the main character, it would still 100% work. That's how, despite it falling into multiple prequel pitfalls, it doesn't really matter because it isn't really one. All of this though, all of this discussion, all of these things I brought up could have been avoided if it was just set after the first. Why wasn't it? Well, according to the writer, one Mr. George Lucas, he of I wish I could wish away my feelings but I can't fame, said they just didn't want to have Nazis as the villains again. Raiders of the Lost Ark is set in 1936, in the lead up to World War II, which officially starts in 1939. The argument here being that anything set after 1939, but before 1945, when World War II officially ended, would have to feature Nazis in some form because they were so pivotal to world events. And if you're going to feature them, you can hardly have like the plucky side character be one, can you? If you're going to feature Nazis, they have to be the villains. Temple of Doom is set in 1935, so the Nazis have had one less year to grow, so there will be less of them out in the world being awful, evil people and to act as antagonists to our daring, dashing adventurers. This kind of makes sense. However, where the first movie hopped around Europe and Northern Africa, very much Third Reich turf, Temple of Doom is set in India, specifically the British Raj, a place the Nazis didn't really get to. So the argument here for not wanting to reuse the villains doesn't really track, George. This movie could be set in 1937 or 1938 and it would still be exactly the same. This movie could be a sequel and it would be exactly the same. And then they go and make the Nazis the villains again anyway in The Last Crusade. So what is even happening here? I suppose this is actually the status quo of the world that I keep bringing up affecting things. This movie does need to fit into the geopolitics of the world at the time. They couldn't set the movie in 1940 or something and just act like the worst thing that the human race has ever done isn't happening just in the background. However, I think they thought their window for where this story could be set was a lot smaller than it actually was, and they didn't take into account the physical geography of it all. They overthought it, I think. I genuinely believe that was the reason for making this a prequel, though. Trying to avoid using the Nazis again. I just don't think it's a very good reason. Prequels. Avoid making them if you can. I just don't think there's ever a need to. Unless the original has been constructed with a prequel in mind. By giving the audience enough questions about its starting point, for example. Or dotting in references to things that happened before it started. Then prequels can work. But making one without the groundwork already laid results in them not doing so. They can be good. X-Men First Class is awesome, but they kind of go against the nature of just storytelling as a whole. And if you don't care about the nature of storytelling as a whole, you can be sort of subconsciously aware that the story you're experiencing isn't quite as fulfilling as it could be. To avoid that though, if you are dead set on making a prequel, just do what Temple of Doom did. Make a story so separate that people are shocked when they find out it's a prequel at all. Hello, thanks a lot for getting to the end of the video. Like and subscribe. Apologies if you can hear noises. My washing machine is on. This is Monday afternoon. This is the latest I've ever left making a video till. But service was not disrupted in any way. Next video is going to be a very different one that I hope people will like. We'll see.